Nice deep breath. I will give you a count-in for every song, just so you know. I'll do it nice and loud. We're at an environment like this. At the concert, you'll be able to see me better. But since we're here and you're not going to be able to see me very well, I'll give it very loud. 1, 2, ready, go. Just so you know. Okay. Now the fun part is you all stand still for 5 minutes.
Good part. Let's do that. You should have listened to. No, when you take a deep breath, you'd be like. Famous. Well, we put on the. My name is Kara Reese. I'm the smartest of everyone here, and I want you to know that everyone here is like really dope. But they're stupid, and I'm the smartest. I'm just saying, and I'm the prettiest. Does that mean that? Like, I have natural highlights too. I'm the prettiest. Shut up. I'm the best. And I'm mature, okay? Everyone else here is not mature. I'm just saying. What's 2,000 times 0 times 3?
You're not helping.
I'm asking you. You're asking me. You know what it is. They're recording this. They know the truth. I don't care. They know the truth. Who's the father? How did the baby? They made baby double. And then Mama shut up. I hope it's on TV. Let's try that with my bow. Wait, are we on TV? Turn around. Are we on TV? Yeah, see? They're recording us. Yeah, so oh yeah, there's a red light right there. He wants to be first. They've been recording because that big cool. That's be cool. Because I'm cool. That's why I'm on TV. So fun. I like you. Okay, look. Has to be great idea. I know. Why not? Smells like you. Smells like her. Got it.
Okay. You can play a little bit.
Wait, play what?
Let me tell you what songs we're doing summertime, winter,
Yes.
I know a fox, hot cross buns, Mary had a little lamb, and twinkle twinkle little star.
Yes. Okay.
Trying to be quiet.
I do my practices. Your hair's on me. That's oh, I know. I love that. I know this box means like tall.
I'll tell you what.
Ow. I just hit myself in the head with the pillow. Wait a minute. I need to practice.
Oh, they know what that means. That works wonderfully. All right. I was just testing, but I love that you don't stop playing as soon as you heard the piano, because you know what my rule is.
I don't like the piano anymore.
That was me.
No, I'm trying to Bradley though. Okay, that's really quiet. And you're like, can you move out from us? Take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath. You can do it, you're gonna fail. Take short breaths. You know you're doing it.
And we're going fast.
Bradley's not that good of a know-it-all. I don't think that I know disrespect. Sir, I'm older than you. I try to. No, young lady, you're not in the conversation. I thought you were trying to. I can fly away.
He's the superintendent. As soon as he gives us the go-ahead, he's the person in charge of the school. The principal.
I thought you were blind. Who's the principal's principal?
I want the principals.
Principals have principals.
He's right there. There's a principal.
Oh, he's here.
Principal. The principal. No, it's the principal. No, it's the principal.
The violin is that
I want to start playing now.
So wait, it play like this?
Yeah, so then your bow doesn't hit the person behind you.
I don't care. The person behind me. No, it's okay to you. I hope so. Then wait, then I have permission. I play practice that says I have permission to like whack them in the head with a bow. Yeah. They hit me first, but I have permission to like self-defense.
Then you'd be loyal.
You know the no.
Yeah.
No. I want to be able to play self-defense. Peace. Self-defense.
No, it's
If they're if there's a
For the parents in the back, if you would like to, you can come up here. We're going to move back a little bit so we can create some space. So if you want to see all these lovely faces playing, please come on up.
yeah.
Well, we can start with Maggie, you want to introduce?
Okay, so to start off our board meeting tonight, we are truly, truly fortunate to have our fourth grade musicians from our violin strings program led by Mr. Boylan. So first of all, families, thank you for coming out, but most importantly, students, thank you for performing for us. This is super exciting. And thank you, Mr. Boylan, for bringing out all of your friends. And we are ready when you are.
so much for coming tonight. You're absolutely fantastic. And every time we see our students in front of us performing, I'm in awe of what you do. It's tough enough to go to school every day, and here you are learning to play the violin in such an awesome way. We have a certificate for you that we would like to give, and if we mispronounce your name, make sure that you yell at Dr. Vitale.
And I apologize.
Right. This is the thing, when you get to be superintendent, you don't have to read the names. I've been waiting my whole career for this.
Hence the word assistant.
Parents, I want to give a special thank you to you for all your time and patience in coming out tonight. Their performance says so much about you and the job that you've done for your children. So you all make sure you give your parents a big hug and a kiss and a big thank you, okay? Just not your dad.
All right, I think I got the first two down. Okay, Gino. Come on up.
All right, Gina. You.
Everyone does.
Where's Eli? All right.
Set low expectations. Andrew.
Hey, oh, there you go.
Lainey. Ava.
Where's Eva?
Lily. Anna. Andrew K. For real this one. Renee. Amelia. Wesley. Perhaps my favorite name in the bunch, Maggie.
Why would that be?
Cole. Audrey. Cole Clayton. Nadia. Lauren.
Yes. Good name.
Connor. Roll. Tremont.
All right.
Yeah, this is one.
Chloe.
Carrot. Did I get it right? Yeah. Good job.
I just said Aunt Amy would be proud. No, she didn't want to make that, you know. No, she's not gonna talk to me. So that's why I didn't snap. I couldn't do the selfie.
We've got a few things to sign when we're done here. You know, Chris, there are a few things about your job I would ever want, but that's about the only one. Watching those kids come up. Everything. You know, I'm laughing all the way.
Forget. I learn all the time. You can't forget. You can't forget.
That's why we should do what you do. I said to Maggie, we need to get that first place because if you're doing a marketing video, that should be fun.
And then the archive.
A lot of it being,
Absolutely.
and
You got one of these ones?
I got
You get one?
I got
I think
four.
everybody got one, okay.
So I'm good. How was your meeting?
yeah, I mean, and we talked after,
Yeah.
just very, very cool.
Oh, my God. Kidding. Okay.
I think there's none. I've seen, don't read it.
So last time,
But we'll see.
Oh my God, I've opened windows, I've overheated, I'm physically sweating. Like, it's not a good look for me. I'm already greasy as an
how'd you do in the names?
I did okay. There were some interesting ones.
This was from last meeting.
Yeah, that's from last meeting.
Okay.
If you want to, we're gonna have some kids, the kids read if we want to after we start. I don't mind starting with that. I mean, I don't think, I asked if anybody else had to speak and they said no.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin the least interesting part of the meeting. Would everyone please rise and pledge the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have roll call, please?
Clearly not as good as Mrs. O'Day. Mr. Abdallah.
Here.
Mr. Azar.
Here.
Mr. Fleming.
Here.
Mrs. Henderson.
Here.
Mrs. Karam. Here. Mr. Medensky.
Here.
Mr. Robeson.
Here.
Mrs. Tierney.
Here.
Mr. Acker.
Here.
Everyone's here. Thank you.
Very much. Our next order of business is to elect a treasurer for the Abington Heights School Board. I'd like to open it for nomination.
I'd like to nominate Gregory Medensky.
And I would like to second that.
Are there any other nominations? In that case, any discussion? You're off the hook, Mr. Medensky. May I please have a roll call?
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Karam. Yes. Mr. Medensky.
Abstain.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
And Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Motion passes
We would've let you
8-0,
vote for
1
yourself.
abstention.
Put it in the minutes.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Quick. Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Acker? Mr. Acker?
Yes, I apologize.
Motion passes 9-0.
Yeah, he approved whatever that was.
Okay, we're going to switch this up just a tad and have public comment now. Those, anyone that would like to address the board.
We know bedtimes are coming, so we figured we're going to have some student speakers. We'll let you come up first. And you can move that microphone down if it's too high.
And can you please state your name?
Hello, my
and
name
where
is
you
Ellie
live?
Warner.
She doesn't need anything.
We're from the middle school. Thank you for allowing us to share some ideas we had recently discussed at CCD. We discussed ways that we can serve our community. Elena will now share with you the email we sent to the board members.
Hi, my name's Elena Mitchell. We are fifth graders at Abington Heights Middle School. We have seen some problems recently and would like to address them. At school every day, we have witnessed students throwing away a ton of food and wasting it. We think we could get a compost bin so we could turn it into good soil. This brings us to our next point. We think we should reopen the greenhouse and use it to grow plants as an after-school activity or even learn how to use it during science. In doing this, we will be able to grow our fruits and veggies for lunch and such. Lastly, every day we throw away way too many items that could be recycled. We need to get recycling bins to help our earth and community. Thank you for considering the following ideas.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any comments?
I actually do. Was surprised to hear that the greenhouse is no longer being utilized. The AEIO, approximately 7 or 8 years ago, through a grant, helped to create that and build that with Mr. Lott, and I'm surprised that it's still not working. So my thoughts was that we would, as a district, we'd look at going back to the AEIO and seeing if we could help organize and get that greenhouse started again.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tierney. Mr. Medensky, Treasurer Medensky, excuse me.
I'm surprised to hear we don't have recycling bins, or if we do, are the students aware of them and the teachers aware of them? I mean, because is there a reason why we wouldn't have them? I don't know. First I'm hearing this, and I'm a big recycler, let's put it this way.
There's a handful of them from what I've seen at the middle school, but I don't know that they're strategically placed in the cafeteria.
Yes, we're talking about actual food waste, such as if something goes on the tray and then into the garbage can? Is that what we're referring to? That's a particular food safety challenge once it goes on the tray and into the can.
I was kind of
And
assuming
recycle.
plastic bottles, maybe plastic forks and knives, if you used them to eat, that wouldn't work, but.
Yes.
Yes, compost.
Yeah, so.
Really for composting.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a composting program, but we do have a recycling program, and they are deployed throughout the district. Specifically, to your point, I'm not exactly certain. We'll have to take a look at that and see where they are, so that obviously they should be strategically placed where the recycling should be occurring. So we'll take a look at that.
Which also, you have to make sure we educate the people the right stuff to put in there and not, those kind of things too.
This is your lesson in local government. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a way to yes, which means we'll figure out how to compost, and we'll take a look at that greenhouse. Right now, the board will be in the near future deciding on some summer projects. So I'll go up and get an eye on the greenhouse. I have not inspected that.
It was being used until last year
Okay.
for a hydroponics class. And there was something wrong with the greenhouse that we're not really sure because nothing grew. So we did not offer hydroponics.
I'm sure these
this year.
ladies are going to figure that out. I
So
mean,
if-
they came here
if they
and
can
we get
help
some
us inspect
compost
the
bins, right?
greenhouse.
Dr. Vitale,
Well,
I
we
can admit,
use-
if it was me, I can understand why it didn't grow. But
I am sure that they did a wonderful job with their hydroponics lessons. Just for whatever reason, the greenhouse was blamed.
So what we can commit to is figuring out a way to, yes, and to work with both of these. Like I said, we'll start with the summer projects. And then since Dr. Vitale is up there at the middle school and I'll be up, what we want to do is we'll get with you because the next decision will be what's next and what are you going to plant and who's going to help and who's going to be responsible and what else do you need. These are all questions I don't have the answers to, but I know you will have them. Can I get a thumbs up? Is that okay? All right.
We have another comment, Mrs. Henderson.
Yes, Ellie, Elena, and Rachel, I just want to thank you for your email and for coming tonight. I know it takes a lot of courage to come and speak in front of a bunch of adults, but this is how we promote change, and this is what we hope to see in all of our students. Small things make big changes, so I just wanted to thank you for your time and coming, and like Dr. Schaefer said, we'll see what we can get done. So thank you. Great job.
Thank you very much.
One more comment. I wonder if we could put this into an after-school program, you know, to do the greenhouse with an advisor and an after-school group, maybe.
Absolutely. That was one of the suggestions. Yeah, that was good.
Okay. Are there any other public comments? People who want to speak? Okay, thank you very much. In that case, we'll turn it over to Dr. Schaefer and Superintendent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Acker. At this point, I get to defer again, not once, but twice. We have two presentations today. First, Mr. Mirabelli is going to provide us with the second most accurate to date preliminary budget. And then Dr. Vitale is going to talk a little bit about mathematics.
All right. Is my mic working? Is everyone can hear me? Okay, good. Well, thank you again for the opportunity to talk budget. This will be our third more formal budget presentation of this calendar year already. And at the risk of repeating myself and providing the same information over and over, I rethought how I was going to do this right up until the time that I was going to present here. So I'm going to go out of order, but we'll start by reviewing where we were. We had an early preliminary budget presentation in January, and you can view that presentation at the link there. We talked about our challenges, cyber charter costs, special ed costs, expiring stimulus funds, and assessment appeals on real estate tax. We talked about the Act 1 index, and we looked at a very early version of the budget. What has happened since then? The governor has announced his budget proposal. That was a favorable one for education. As we all know, that doesn't go into law unless the General Assembly votes for it in its totality. So we want to follow that closely. And we also had a formal presentation on that in March. There's the link there if you'd like to check that out. We are continually updating budget estimates as data becomes available. We're also leveraging forecasting software to efficiently and accurately project current and future year budgets. Efficiently on the current year is the key term there because our current year forecasts are done by hand and take substantial time to get it done. So we're leveraging our Forecast 5 software now to create some really dynamic and easy to manipulate reports, and I'll be reporting back with the April update at the next meeting. And also we had our audit report presented to the Finance Committee as well as acknowledged and approved by the board at the last board meeting. So let me skip a few slides, and I'm going to take you to the most boring document we have in the business office. That is called the PDE 2028. This shows up in your folders, your board folders, every May and every June. And I thought, instead of just putting it there, why don't we just talk about it in a topical way? Okay, so here's the front page. That's what it looks like. Board secretary, board president, and superintendent will sign. On the second page, we have an interesting tidbit, and this deals with fund balance limitations, specifically assigned, unassigned fund balance. So if your budget is greater than or equal to $19 million, which is the category we fall in, your unassigned fund balance may not be more than 8% if you wish to raise taxes above the index. As you can see, we're well below that at 1.91%. This is just another certification of public inspection, and this is notable because we have to pass the preliminary budget in May, and then we sign off on this. The board president signs off on this to say we made this budget available for public inspection. Changes can be made to the document between now and June, but the public has to have a chance to have a look at this. This will be published on our website. In fact, it's already there. For public review. They can also come into my office and ask me for a copy of it. Just want to show you a breakdown of our fund balance. We have committed fund balance of 1.5 million. That 1.5 is committed for future employee benefit and salary increases. The assigned fund balance is assigned for future capital projects, and the unassigned fund balance is somewhat of a contingency fund. For if something breaks over and above what we've budgeted, you have a little bit of slack there to mitigate some of those circumstances without borrowing. Here we are, a look at our revenues. So this is a two-page section. Current real estate taxes, you'll see, are highlighted on the top. Real estate revenues, this number includes taxes up to the 4.8% state index. Okay, that's not currently a recommendation. It is simply, the options will be open to the board until the final budget passage in June, okay? And I say this every year, it's bad business to start low and then come back with something higher than what you said in May to the public. And I don't know if it's illegal or not, but it's certainly not good business to sort of walk back on something that you put out there. The other thing in here is we just learned yesterday what our state tax property reduction allocation was. So we removed that number out of the real estate number and placed it down in the 7340 section, about 2/3 of the way down the page. That's an allocation of gaming funds, which directly reduces taxpayers' tax bills. And that's an increase of $13,000 year over year. So some slightly good news there. We also trued up our current real estate tax collection to the historical rate of tax collection. So rather than the 93.5% we came in with last year, I think we're at 94.6% this year. On the flip side, we had to decrease our delinquent tax revenue anticipated, because if you don't collect it current, you collect it delinquent. So you'll see that $600,000 has been reduced. Earnings on investments, at least for the first, say, 6 months of the year, we're still looking at a very positive interest rate environment from what we can tell, and from what we can do with some treasuries that we might be able to lock up before year end to make sure that we are still gaining good yield on our deposits, excuse me. Probably the hottest topic on this page is at the 7111 basic ed funding formula. That's $7.5 million. And to be very transparent about how we arrived at that, we took what I would consider to be a conservative 2% increase on the state subsidy. Normally, that's a really, really good increase for us. However, the governor's proposed a very nice number. We can't really take that to the bank until something like that passes. Just to give you an idea what 2% means, that's 147,000 higher than we got last year. To give you an idea of what the governors would mean, we would get an additional 417,000 on top of that. Okay, so we don't know what's going to happen. We have a 2% estimate in there. The more we hear, the better we're going to refine this estimate. If we hear nothing else, it'll probably land here. If we go into a stalemate into July, we'll probably keep an increase that looks like this in the budget. So that's the best we can do, I think, right now, without getting overly aggressive. The worst thing you could do is budget for that entire amount, and then it doesn't come in, and that's a fast lane to, a bigger budget deficit than you anticipated. And then the last note I'll make on this slide, and this is the most time I wanted to spend here, is the revenue from federal sources. You'll note that the ESSER 2 allocation of $586,000 is not in there. It's because this is the last year that we're currently in. ESSER 2, as we've known for a long time, is going away next year. Take a quick stop on the real estate tax rate report. This is where you can find all the breakdowns and how you arrive at the real estate tax revenue. I've highlighted a few key numbers in here. You can see the 127.0889 mills. That's the current year millage rate, as well as the millage rate with the 4.8% hypothetical tax increase. And you can see that 133.18 mils. So just wanted to point those out. That's how you use this form. And there's some further calculation. The bottom section, section 5, we're awaiting the homestead farmstead data from Lackawanna County so we can complete this. So this is a preliminary budget for a reason. We don't even have all the data so that we can determine what the homestead farmstead exclusions will be for next year. But rest assured, we'll have that by June. Here is another look at some other local taxes which we collect. We have local service tax. Some refer to that as a nuisance tax because it is a small tax. You can see it nets us $53,000 annually. Earned income tax, our residents pay 0.5% of their earnings to us, shared with the township or borough. And that is expected to net us about $4.8 million. And real estate transfer tax, we're seeing a cool down there, and we've revised our estimate downward to about $550,000. Still a historically healthy amount, though. And on the expense side, which we've discussed at length, I have a few summaries to show you back up in the presentation. I really wanted to spend some time on revenue forecasts. The one thing I do want to hit here is at the bottom, we see total expenditures is highlighted. Just so you can see a more true picture, because one of the tendencies is when there's a budgetary reserve or contingency in the budget, we'll say, oh, well, there gives us a reconciling item to say, okay, back that out. There's no budgetary reserve in this budget. Okay, so the expenses you see here are accounted for. In particular, the HR office did an outstanding job of updating every salary of the professional staff. So we don't have estimates in there for what the salaries would be. We have the actual professional staff salaries of what we anticipate them to be for next year, right? So this is a lot more accurate than we've seen in January, okay? Also, thanks to Karen Dewar and Dr. Vitale's office for taking care of it, and Stephanie for doing a great job on that. Here's a look at some estimated cash and short-term investments. Fund balance is around $11 million. We're projecting a bit of a loss right now for the year. So here's where you can see where the estimate is at the end of this year versus at the end of next year. These are very rough numbers. Still many budget decisions to be made, and then you actually have to go through the rest of the year. Capital projects we have at $5 million going into next year. Food services is about $1 million. We have some planned investments there to better serve the kids. And then the internal service fund, also known as the medical fund, is at $6.4 million after some utilization of fund balance in that fund last year.
Jim, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
The internal service fund, that's all medical or partial?
That's the medical fund.
That's the medical fund.
Yes. Okay. Now here's a look at our long-term indebtedness. We only have two debts. That's bonds payable. You can see at the end of this year, we'll owe $1.325 million. At the end of next year, we'll only owe $670,000. Lease obligations, $170 million, or $170,000, I'm sorry. It's a considerable difference there. $170,000 as of the end of this year. Actually, yes. So the lease obligation will be paid off in May of 2024, and the bonds will be paid off in March of 2025. Okay? And let's see what else is in the Cliff's Note version. Those are all the highlights I wanted to make on the PDE 2028. I hope I didn't bore you to death going through that, but so often we put it up there, we talk about what's in it, but we don't really go through it. So I took a risk there. I don't know if that was a good one or a bad one. It was okay? All right. So in summary, we'll just kind of just go over it here. Here's and I'll leave this on the website for you to review. I'm not going to walk everyone through it again. But here's what local, federal, and state breakdown is over the last 3 years, so you can have comparisons. I'll have even more detailed comparisons next time with reports generated out of our Forecast 5 software. Here is the same comparison on the expense side. One of the major changes we made from January to now was increasing tuition for special education placements, and also tuition for cyber charter for special education placements. We were examining sort of the trend, and we were actually under budget on the regular ed side of cyber charter, largely because cyber charters were identifying and converting students over to the special ed category, so we had more in that category. So we had to increase our tuition there. But that's really the notable change beyond all the salary and benefit moves we made in this budget from when we last, yes.
Could you go back to that statement again? So you're saying charter schools are categorizing?
I should probably re-say it. Students who are regular education in the cyber charter school, some have been identified, we assume rightfully so, as having an IEP special education, which warranted a doubling of the tuition rate. Yes, sorry if I said that poorly. I didn't mean anything.
I was just trying to understand.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely, you know.
No,
Okay.
I just made an editorial comment.
Okay, all
I
right.
just think a little differently. I'm more not.
So who's making that
So,
determination?
They are.
They are, not us.
Yes.
So if, this is great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful for them. So our student can go there, a student that we say does not need an IEP. Student gets to cyber charter. I don't quite know where the campus is or where they can assess him, but they assess him as an IEP, and they get double the tuition.
There's no way
Or
to
more than that. I mean, it's more than double.
Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, I mean, but this, we've talked about, sorry, Jim, we just hijacked that. You said the
That was all I
special
needed.
words. Again, this is, I'll let Jim finish out, but as I said before, and I'm going to say it again, is that we need to engage with our local legislators to push hard and ask them specifically what they have done. There are numerous recommendations on what you can do for fair funding in this realm that our own organizations, PSBA has made, the business managers, PASPO, PASA, every single organization has put these out. We do receive categorical funding for special education based on essentially like a level of need, right? But that is not the case in the charter world. So someone who may need itinerant services, that would be considered a low cost to us, i.e. a speech or hearing. We would be paying the full amount at a charter, which this year is $22,000. So anytime we invest on our end, it goes up on that other side. And that's why in Pennsylvania you see 500 different funding formulas for cyber charter. And that's exactly why in less than 10 years, the amount that we've paid has doubled. And in fact, the savings that we had this year from bringing students back, if we were just at the rate that we used last year, we would have saved an additional probably, I think right now it's up to $110,000, $120,000. So, poor Jim, I've hijacked this, you triggered me on a Wednesday.
I'm sorry.
But I mean, that it's really an ongoing debate, but once again, in public, pushing that out there as, you know, we can't continue to be satisfied with, this is a legislative process. No, it's not. We're bleeding the community and we're bleeding our schools. There needs to be fair funding in this area. Sorry, Ms. Karen.
Can I just offer, after the last time we brought this up, someone contacted me from the community to ask how exactly they can go about advocating for this change. And there's a website, pacharterchange.org, and they have a contact your legislator, and it's pretty much a form letter for some of these issues that we are addressing, and you can add on to that, but it's a really easy way. I know most of us are busy, and contacting your legislator sounds good in theory, but the execution of it can be challenging. So pacharterchange.org, it is by PSBA, which is one of the organizations you mentioned, and it's a click to contact your legislature. So
I have one more question. So this district gets some type of reimbursement for our special ed department and our IEPs. So is it possible for us to inquire on getting some type of reimbursement from the tuitions that we are paying for the IEP student, that $22,000? Is it possible for us to fill out some kind of a grant? No, reimbursement? Okay, so I think it's just criminal. Yeah.
A license to steal.
This has been going on for quite a few years, and contacting our legislators has been a suggestion for quite a few years. I think, and I've said this before, I think we need to speak in volumes, and I think school districts around our area, we need to all gather together and have a forum with our legislators and ask them questions on how they are going to help us. We had a forum about 4 or 5 years ago where we invited, it was mostly, I think we chaired it, but it was the Scranton School District that actually had huge financial issues. And we had our legislators there. And I don't know if it made any difference, because here we are again. And so there has to be more than contacting legislators at this stage. We've done this for so many years. So we need to brainstorm. We need community to help us. We have to figure out a way to pressure them so every year we don't have to raise taxes because of this specific issue. Because it's not fair. The funding is not fair, and it hasn't been fair. And we've just exposed another area where it's not fair.
The fact of the matter is, the cost for cyber charter is far lower than standard public education. And so we're paying them what our cost is, and they're using it for a service that costs them less to begin with. So right at the start, they are making money, and the cyber charters are inherently a for-profit. The sad thing is the test scores for cyber charter are at the bottom of the state. And that's a shame. They have lots of money, and they're not producing the results they should with the kind of money.
I just have a rhetorical question.
Oh, we love those.
Yeah, I know, because I don't expect an answer. I don't know the answer. But basically what it comes down to is, if a student needs extra help, I'm all for it. I don't care what that extra help is, get it for them. However, to piggyback on what Warren said, their test scores are the worst.
Yeah.
Is there anything being done? Because, you know, I do my garbage reading in the newspaper or whatever online, and I haven't seen anybody analyzing why are their scores so low and what are they doing about it? Is there any studies going on that anybody's aware of?
They're not judged by the same standards we are. They aren't audited to the degree we are.
Is anybody,
There are
legislation to do that?
No, no,
Can't say that word.
no.
Thank you.
Jim, I know you got some good news on there from the remaining slides now, don't you?
Okay, you're good, because she's bringing the good news. I did forget, I wanted to make one note.
You have a high kitchen balance, new ovens and stuff.
On the, want to make one note on the revenue side. The real estate assessed value had to be decreased last year by about 2.55 million, which resulted in a decline of $345,000 due to 2 commercial real estate tax appeals. One settled, one pending and expected to be settled. So that's $345,000, not in the revenue for next year.
So he triggered me again. I've talked about this before, and I understand that there is a careful balance when talking about organizations within the community. But these 2 organizations that we're talking about, Weiss and DJM, this is a hit in the district that is going to be ongoing for $345,000. That's the equivalent of 3.5 teachers. It is not because of lack of effort on our part on reaching out to these community partners to try to work on an agreement that would be beneficial to both sides, and more importantly, not hurt our school community. Because clearly the root cause, in my mind, for this issue is we're in a county that has not had an assessment in over 50 years. And that has created a space for some people with specific skill sets to, take us to court for a reassessment, not for anything that we have done wrong, and are yielding new assessments that, in my opinion, are way below what I would consider to be their value. And in the meantime, we will eat that. And this is a good example how a couple organizations can really impact us. This is 2 businesses, 3.5 teachers. Any other year that we'd be talking about this, if we were talking about losing 3.5 teachers, that would be significant. If we were talking about hiring 3.5 teachers, that would be significant. And you look at our elementary schools, that's a grade level of teachers. If I said to you we were getting rid of a grade level of teachers as a result of something like this happening, you could then feel that magnitude when you put it into a comparable like that of a teacher. Unfortunately, at this time, there is nothing for us to do. However, I will say, and I have said this before, but I'm hopeful that the reassessment will occur. And at that time, the shoe will be on the different foot. And, my recommendation to the board at that time would be to go after the undervalued commercial properties that have taken us to court before. Because this is a significant dent.
Just to follow on from that, when we all look at these budgets, nobody at this table wants to raise taxes and ask the taxpayers to pay more money. But when you look at the effect of things like that in cyber charter schools, it really puts us in a position where we are either going to have to do that, or we're going to have to try and, again, let teachers go, or really reduce the service we provide to the community. So it's just a very bad situation.
Superintendent Schaefer, just an FYI, I was in a debate last week, and I wasn't representing the district as an official, but this did come up. And, you know, one of the recommendations that I made was to actually expedite it. So it's on track, and they are doing it. But if I look at the status reports from the vendor, you know, it looks a little rough. You know, I don't know if they're going to make the timetable, and there's some issues around transparency and what some of the metrics mean. So I shared my concerns in that forum, and so there's awareness among the other people that were in that debate. So that's the good news. But it's a well-known issue, I think, in the county, and I think you captured it perfectly. And I echoed that last Thursday.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you doing that.
Mr. Robeson, is there a deadline for this? Is there a time frame where they're supposed to be completed with this assessment?
So thank you, Mr. Tierney. There is a schedule, but from the status reports that I saw and the due date, I forget what exactly the due date was. It did. I thought it. I'm not sure, but it didn't look like what I saw in the status reports and what the date was. I had trouble connecting it.
No doubt. Okay. So let me just couple thoughts. Now, anytime you want to talk about taxes, it's important to consider how it impacts the individual taxpayer. So I wanted to just put this resource out there for anyone that wants to know an impact on their own individual tax bill. The green link, the Lackawanna County Tax Assessment Database, will show you any parcel in the county. You can look up your own, you can look up your neighbors, and you can see what the assessed value is. And I also provided a hopefully common language way to run through the calculation on what the maximum tax increase would mean to a homeowner or a commercial business or whomever it may be. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but this will be a resource I'll post on the website, so anybody that wants to know how any tax increase will impact them, you can figure that out. The median tax increase on the median bill is $122. Should you go to the index, I recognize not everyone is the median, and most aren't. So here's the methodology. And then this is more on a macro level. If you went to no tax increase, obviously that means no additional revenue to the district. Half of the index, 2.4%, is $681,000 additional revenue, and a raise to the index is $1.35 million. That is what is in this budget presented to you tonight. And here's what that looks like in the impact on the deficit. No tax increase has you at a $2.77 million deficit. Half of the index has you at right around $2 million, and a raise to the index reduces the deficit to about $1.36 million, just to give that some context. And
Excuse me, from the standpoint of dollars, 4.8% increase of our tax basis will give us how much?
1.356.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
No problem. But I'll have this all posted to the website. Any other questions? It was a lot longer than I thought it would be, but thank you for the time.
That wasn't your fault, Jim. That was me. That's good.
So I have exciting stuff to present, and my goal is to not trigger the superintendent.
I have no math triggers.
Well, you say that now.
Right, exactly. So for split F correlation analysis.
So as we've talked about this school year, we have had a focus on mathematics and the curriculum and the program that we are implementing to address the state standards. So tonight, I'm just going to give you kind of our journey through our math guiding committee, where we started and kind of where we landed. So first, I just want to highlight that we did not do this in a silo. So Mr. Preachy was a teacher on special assignment that you kindly allowed us to do and included in the budget. So he spent the entire year, and he's still working on looking at all of these things we're talking about and really helped to lead this guiding committee. But we also decided that Vince and I would not be enough, that we wanted input. So these are all the teachers on the math guiding committee. We had teachers from every building, every grade span. We had intervention teachers, special education teachers, and administrators from every grade span. And they took time out of their day. We met 5 times, 5 full days in this room just talking about mathematics, instruction, and programming. I geeked out about it. I don't know if everybody else did, but it was a heavy lift, and really kudos to everyone who sat around this table to work on this process. So the first thing that we really worked on was talking about a math vision statement, and we developed a math vision statement that really mirrors our district vision statement. So Abington Heights mathematics, where collaborative problem solving and perseverance lead to excellence. And that's really what we want to achieve in our program. And then we developed what is called a framework. So the framework is what the expectations are from every stakeholder group. And I know this is small. It's on our website. So if you go under curriculum math, all of this is posted on our website. But this is the framework that really sets what we need to happen for us to meet our vision statement. So it goes over, again, all those stakeholder groups. And really, we talked about that with not all of this, so if one part is missing, the entire program falls apart. So before I go on, I just want to thank you as a board, because you have given us and afforded us the opportunity for the fiscal resources for highly qualified teachers, high quality instructional materials, effective and efficient math interventions, and then professional development. And you have trusted the educators to make these professional decisions on program, student, and district needs. So those are your expectations, and very honestly, every single one of you embody that, so thank you for that support. From there, what we decided we needed to do was really look at what every grade level needs to master to move on as a mathematician. So a lot of times you will hear of a portrait of a graduate. So a lot of districts have something called a portrait of a graduate, which is when students graduate, this is what they look like. We didn't like that, because there's 12 years before they graduate that we need to backfill. So what we did was we created a portrait of a mathematician for every grade level and every course at the high school. And it really is a checklist. This is what your student, our students, should master by the end of the school year. It takes the standards and it makes it on a nice one-page clean document. All of our teachers have received this document. These are also all posted on the website. Parents are going to receive these documents, and it's included in our curriculum. This really is a perfect snapshot. So now our teachers can see this is what our students need to learn and master, and they can check it off and track student progress as they move along. So that's an example of a second grade one, and this is an example of an Algebra 2. And basically, the columns are the standards, and then underneath are the eligible content areas. So from there, we said, okay, here's what we need to learn. How are we going to learn it, and how are we going to deliver? When we started this project, just with full disclosure, we said the programs are junk, they are not working, they are not meeting our expectations, and that's the reason our scores are not meeting our expectations. Well, we took a look at the standards, and Mr. Preachy did a really wonderful job of breaking down every grade level standard in the PA core standards versus the programs that we teach at K to 6, K to 8 rather. And they actually really closely align to the standards. So it wasn't the programs. The programs have what we need, but we still wanted to investigate other newer programs. People think our programs are old. They are not. The one copyright date, I believe, is 2016, and another is 2018. We use Everyday Math K to 5 and Big Ideas 6 to 8. We looked at 4 programs overall. So we started by going on to Ed Reports, looking at programs that meet usability, standards, and I can't remember the third one, but it's 3 different metrics, and we only looked at the 4 programs that met every one of those metrics and was highly recommended. From there, Mr. Preachy and I took a set rubric and we whittled it down to 3. Then we had publishers come in from those 3 programs on the right and present to our guiding committee. They spent over an hour going over what their programs offer. And our teachers filled out individual rubrics on each of the programs. Then we did the same thing for our current programs. So we had current teachers present the same information for Everyday Math and Big Ideas. And then we had them fill out a rubric. And the rubric had 14 different areas, and I'm going to show it in a minute. And it was very, very interesting, the outcome. So here's what the rubric looked at. It looked at standards, standard of mathematical practice, coherence, rigor, discourse and student engagement, tasks and analysis and activities analysis, how we assess, how we integrate technology, differentiation, usability and readability, how we support diverse learners, teacher support, cultural relevance, and family engagement. So those were the metrics. And then we had a decision to make. Do we continue with our current programs or purchase a new program? I took all of those rubrics, because I love spreadsheets, I put it into a spreadsheet, and very honestly, no one program was better than the other. They all had an average within, it was like a 28-point range. They were all within a 30 to a 26-point range, so around the average of 28. There was no program that stood out higher than another. A new program is about a $350,000 investment. Well, if one doesn't stand out and our current programs are meeting our needs, why make the purchase? So then we had to pivot our conversation. If we don't purchase, what do we need to do? And what we decided was we would want to better invest in our teachers through professional development. So basically, we said our elementary teachers, to no fault of their own, because our elementary teachers are dedicated, committed professionals who do a wonderful job. But their pre-service program is only one methods course of mathematics, and it really teaches you how to write a math lesson. It doesn't teach you foundational mathematics skills. So we went looking for math professional development, and I want to be very clear. Programs and publishers offer you professional development, but it's all about implementation. How do you implement the program? It's not necessarily content specific. We wanted content specific professional development. So that's where we decided to put our energy. And we found something called ongoing assessment program. It's called OGAP, and you'll hear us talk about OGAP. Ongoing assessment program has 4 different topics that they cover: additive, multiplicative, fractional, and proportional. They are basically graduate level courses in those 4 different areas. And what their program offers, and I want to be clear, it's a professional development program. It's nothing to buy other than knowledge. So they're not going to sell us an intervention program. There's nothing else other than them sharing knowledge. They come in for 4 days next school year, if we approve this. We're suggesting that they come in for 4 days and give this graduate level course in these 4 areas. And the 4 areas really are by grade span. So K to 2 teachers would get additive, multiplicative would be 3 to 5 teachers, proportional would be grades 6 through 8, and then the following year we would have to do fractional, because fractional overlaps on grades 3 through 6. So they come in, they work with a cohort of 22 students, of 22 teachers. They do the 4 days of really digging into the additive practice and understanding addition and subtraction and all of the strategies. Then they come back for 5 more days, once every other month, and they coach our teachers. And really what they're doing is they're teaching content, but they're also teaching error analysis and formative assessments. And that's really where this started. So the researcher of OGAP started out doing research at Penn. And they found that they wanted to really focus on formative assessment. And through their research, they realized that teachers don't know what to do with the formative assessment because they don't have the knowledge. So when students get something wrong, they just mark it wrong. They're not offering the students feedback because they necessarily can't look at that error and understand the processing to correct the error. And I know I'm getting into the weeds, and I apologize. So it started from that. So they said, ooh, we started with formative assessment, people don't understand it, and then they realized they needed to offer this professional development in order to continue their research. So that's really where it came out of, just so you have some backstory. So they come in for 5 days, they work with teachers, they look at student work, they help teachers understand when the students make this error, this is why, and this is how it relates to those principles that we did PD on. So that is what we are suggesting. It is a heavy lift. For next school year, it would be about $123,000. We figured out exactly how much it was a seat, and because they will only do 22 people per cohort, we have some extra seats, because like we can only have, our third cohort of additive has only 16 teachers in it, so I have some open seats. I've already sold those seats to neighboring school districts, so even though the bill is $122,000, I know for sure, I think I have 6 seats sold for next school year at $12.50 a seat. So we're getting some of that back, if that's a selling point. And again, we have in the budget $350,000. We're not using that for programming. We decided we'd rather support our teachers and invest in our teachers to support their knowledge. My concern was if we do this, what happens with new teachers? So I've spoken to the IU. The IU has agreed to invest in bringing in OGAP presenters starting in the 24-25 school year. So if we have any new teachers, we can just send them to the IU as opposed to us bringing in OGAP again, and just use that through the IU. So we believe that this is the best solution to helping to support our students. So what's next? Board approval. So we would love for next board meeting to put this professional development contract on the agenda and for you to approve OGAP, and then we can solidify those dates. The school calendar, if you look at the professional development dates, they're already intentionally scheduled for 2 days in September, 2 days in October, back to back, so that we can have cohesive 2 days with our teachers to do this. We would appreciate approval for our math K-12 curriculum. Tonight we have K-8 on the agenda. At the beginning of June, we will have 9 through 12. And then our responsibility is to continue to offer strategic and supportive professional development, work with our teachers to align and understand student assessment. So once they understand student assessment and formative assessment and error analysis, now we need to go look at our assessments and how do we need to change our assessments to make sure that we are actually assessing what we're teaching. And then continually review student achievement and growth data to make sure that we are growing our students and that this plan works. And I just want to thank again. So these teachers sat through publishers, they sat through discussions, they were vulnerable, they were open to just listening to each other and understanding the different grade spans. It was some of my favorite days in education, meeting with this math guiding committee, and it just shows the commitment of our teachers and our professionals and our administrators to make sure that we are offering only the best for our students. Mrs. Tierney.
This sounds like a wonderful opportunity for our teachers and ultimately for our students. A couple questions. You spoke as this is graduate courses.
Graduate level work. So they're not getting graduate credits for it, but it really is a higher level of, it's not just a professional development where you sit and take notes. It is an engaging professional development that would be almost at the graduate level, and that's kind of why I'm framing it as at that. It's not a graduate level course, it's just that level of content and in-depth analysis of mathematics.
Will they get Act 48 hours for this? Will they get an opportunity to better their hours of academic improvement for their qualifications, for their need for their continuing certification? So
Any professional development that we offer, they receive Act 48 hours. So absolutely.
Okay. Are you making this mandatory for all of your math teachers?
Yes. So when I say mandatory, this is happening during our professional development days.
Oh, this is happening, during your Act 48 hour, your, what do you call it?
In-service days,
In-service
Act 80 days,
Yeah,
yes.
Act 80 days, okay. What happens if you have long-term subs in for these math teachers that are on this list, and you have a sub, and then they go through this program, and then they're gone? Are you concerned about that, or is there opportunity for the teacher to come into that too, that's also out?
So, and I apologize if I didn't communicate that. As I tried to say, we've reached out to the NEIU, and they have made a commitment, starting in the 24-25 school year, to offer OGAP. That way we can send our teachers who maybe are new to our district or are returning from a leave or something of that nature. Because I didn't want to do this without having a capacity to sustain this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I think I commend you for like only needing 16 seats, but you have a 22. But is those other 6 seats, instead of selling them to another school district, is there any benefit for other teachers in our district to have those?
I have every teacher of mathematics included in the cohort.
I'm not talking about mathematics because this is kind of, well, okay. Yeah, that's my next question, because great analysis in the fact that we're looking at the program to say, why are test scores poor? Okay, you discover it's not the program, it's the teaching method, and then you made the statement that our teachers aren't prepared, meaning our colleges teach them how to do a lesson plan. They don't tell them how to teach math. Well, how does that transcend to the sciences? English, are they taught how to teach those courses? And is this something we should be, not saying that those programs are bad or indifferent, that hasn't been studied, but is that something we look at in the future to say, hey, do we need to have this development to help our teachers be able to know how to teach and know what's wrong, whether it's English, math, or science?
So our elementary teachers only receive 1 credit. Grades 7 through 12 are content specialists, so they have dual majors in their content and then are teaching certified. So this is really, I'm only speaking of our elementary teachers with this. Elementary teachers receive more ELA, English, and reading. They used to only receive 6 credits. They are now increasing it. And if you are around the professional development world of education, everybody is talking about the science of reading, and that is what is being pushed. I would argue that we need to focus on math as well. Science we're doing next year, so I'll let you know where we're at with science. But I would say that most elementary teachers are teachers of reading and then math in that order, and not to their fault. Like, I don't want, yeah. It's the pre-service programs, correct, and the pre-service programs recognize it.
To be, go ahead, Rod.
So I just had a couple questions. So when they come for those 4 days, how many instructors from OGAP are coming to our property, like, to offer the development? Like, what's the number?
I want to say it's 7.
So 7 each day?
Yeah.
And then they're here for the full day?
And then they're here for the full day. So they're here for 2 days, and then they come back for 2 days in October, and then those 7 come back and work with those same teachers 5 days. So I think it's like November, January, March.
And are those coaching days like during the school day?
Yeah.
While they're actually teaching? They're coaching while they're teaching?
So what we will do is we will bring in substitutes by buildings, and then like they'll spend some time in the classroom, then they'll spend some time with the teachers looking at student work.
Right.
So they might spend an hour with each teacher going through student work and understanding those errors.
And then in addition to the professional development that's live, when they come and do it in person, am I correct that there's access to teaching materials and other materials that our teachers will have? Is the cost of this program just for those development days, or is there other
There's a
value?
book. Correct. Mrs. Henderson, do you have the book? So there's a book that includes in that, but it is not a teaching program. So whereas like everyday math is a program, you teach it and you have a manual.
Yeah, it's not a program, I get that.
Yeah, so this is just the only resource that we're purchasing that's included in the quote is, so that's the additive book
Okay.
that teachers will have as their resource. So it's
So
kind
the
of like,
cost of the program, the cost of this is mostly for the development?
it
for the
truly is,
development days.
yes.
And then how did you find this company relative to, are there others that do the same thing?
So
and-
we started reaching out to other districts that had improving math test scores. And Wallenpaupack Area School District has invested long range with OGAP, because the next step of OGAP is then, once you get them trained, you can send people to their summer like workshop, and then they can become trainers for you. We're not there yet, but Wallenpaupack School District did, and Mr. Pricci and Mr. Emiliani went to Wallenpaupack and spent a significant amount of time hearing their journey and what success they've seen from the program. And then at that point, we started to spend some time with the publisher and understanding the input. Also, our superintendent has some pretty significant experience at Penn with OGAP as well.
And to be, I was, Maggie facilitated this process, and I need to be transparent about this for a couple reasons. And her and Vince came to me, I said, okay, how'd that go? And they said, well, she told me and said, Vince had a great conversation with somebody in Wallenpaupack, and have you heard of OGAP? And I said, well, it's part of a randomized control trial with the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia with 61 schools that was published nationwide. And so I know that there is some significant impact and it's a high quality program. Just make sure you do your due diligence, because this is about expanding skill and getting out of your norm and disrupting that. And what I mean by that is one thing that they would take a look at, for example, is like error analysis, okay? Oftentimes, and you go in a math classroom, someone just has a book, and there's a lot about didactic instruction that you learn at the college. But what we're really training our teachers to do is not only expand, but deepen their knowledge and skills within the content, but to say, Mike Fleming's doing an algebra problem, and I take a look at it and say, well, Mike made this mistake here. What does that mean? What precursor skill might Mike be struggling with? And is Mickey struggling with the same thing? And is Anthony struggling with the same thing? Well, if that's the case, then I need to change something up there. But it's looking at it at a much deeper level. And these are great questions, providing feedback. So once you get some training, it doesn't stop there. We have to be coaches. We have to make sure we have peer observations, and they have the opportunity to give feedback and watch each other, because that's the only way that we can expand potential. And I talked to Maggie about this before. Potential is not fixed. It's deliberate. And folks that are excellent for a reason, because they take discrete skills and they practice those, and they practice for perfection, not just practice. And this is really the next generation of professional development. I look around the room and I know that you all have gotten professional development in your careers, and how many times you have somebody just giving you a PowerPoint presentation, right? Here we're actually doing.
You mentioned training the trainers kind of concept, so we have people selected to, we're not going to have these people all around, but you're learning to be able to, anybody can come in, your key individuals, I think, teach them how to use this whole structured philosophy.
So I believe one of the next steps is to, once we all are OGAP trained, is to, yes, send some people up to they're in Vermont. So send some people up in the summer to Vermont to their 1-week workshop to become trainers, and then sustain that skill set and help as coaches. And part of our math committee and our math program this year was, we did a book study on coaching, and 55 teachers engaged in that book study of what peer coaching really looks like. So we're also kind of in tandem supporting that as we go.
One more question. You mentioned that the IU was going to purchase this also?
So the IU is going to invite OGAP in, and they will offer to all of our districts in the IU. And then if we have teachers that have not been trained, we can send our teachers there to get training. As opposed to us bringing them in again, a second time, we would send our teachers to the IU for that.
Just one question. Did you mention whether permanent subs are included in this?
They are.
They are, okay. I just had one comment, and it started as a question, but you answered it. I think it's so important to do some type of benchmarking when we embark on such a critical assessment like this, that we do benchmarking with other districts. And so I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you for all your information.
Absolutely. Any other questions? And I was a success because Dr. Schaefer did not get triggered.
No triggers, no triggers.
He
He
did trigger, you're right.
But he didn't use the word trigger, though, so.
Yeah, I did.
Come on. I can't
I
even
like
get
the
a win.
research. I like the research. Yeah, it's my trigger.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your support.
Okay. And once again, lost my way. I believe we're on the personnel report.
Yeah, we are. Wait, hold on. Charter schools is next. Not joking. Mr. Acker, I'd ask the board to approve the personnel report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Medensky.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Mr. Acker asks that the board approve the 2023 extended school year professional and support staff list.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Medensky.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson.
Yes.
And Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Just a little bit on this next item. Each intermediate unit in Pennsylvania is required to provide certain services to us. These are enumerated through the Intergovernmental Agreement for Special Education Services. This is something that we approve yearly. So, Mr. Acker, I would ask the board to approve the Intergovernmental Agreement for Special Education Services for 2023-24.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Medensky.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
I would like to also congratulate the math committee. I'd like to congratulate Vince, Mr. Preachy, and Dr. Vitale for all the hard work that has yielded some great outcomes and some great things for the future. You've heard about some of it tonight. And at this time, I'd ask Mr. Acker to request the board approve the math curriculum guides, grades K through 8.
We need to go to the motion before it.
Ooh, is there a motion before that?
I have the next one as our math curriculum.
Hold on. We pulled,
We pulled that. Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm working on that.
unless you want to vote on
Working
it.
on it.
You're right, I put your name on it.
This time it's not my fault, sir.
It was.
Just
You're going to know all our tricks up here.
Let's control him. Can I have a a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
And Mr. Acker?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passes 9-0.
Congratulations on a great job, and I certainly strongly recommend people to go on the website and check out some of these curriculum documents by grade. It's really very impressive.
Thank you.
On the next item, I just wanted to revisit this, and last year we talked about some changes to the Pennsylvania code that I had highlighted, I thought were important moves from the state, and one of them is requiring school districts to have dual enrollment agreements. We were way ahead of the curve there. As a result of this, we have a lot of schools coming to us with dual enrollment agreements. We don't have to necessarily do much in that way for some of these. It just pays dividends for our kids, and what you have in front of you is one from Penn State. So these are courses and articulations that are going to go into effect when our kids go to Penn State, and they get credit, and the parents save money on this. So at this time, I'd ask the board to approve the dual credit affiliation agreement between Pennsylvania State University and Abington Heights.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion?
Um,
Hold on.
Did I see that there were grants, money that was approved by the state for dual credit? Are we eligible for any of that? Saw that in my news feed.
That we weren't eligible for a lot. There was, and that deadline was, yeah.
As is often the case with.
Yeah.
Mr. Badensky.
How are we communicating? Because I know this Penn State, you have, I think, on the agenda, Slippery Rock?
Well, that's for a nurse's practicum.
But it's still
Yep.
another dual enrollment kind of thing,
Yep.
different curriculum. Are we communicating this to our students?
Yep, we do. We talk about that during the course selection process. We also work with our counselors, and if you're a student, you go on something called PA Track. And you are able to take a look and see where those articulations are. So when you take this, you can say, for instance, we have an articulation with Lackawanna College, but Lackawanna College has one with the University of Scranton. So all of our students that get an associate's degree, we've got maybe 5 on track now with Lackawanna College, because of the articulation agreement with the University of Scranton, they go in as a junior. So these are all the things that we go over, and thank you for asking, because if I do hear from parents, the school that has the most Abington Heights graduates going to is Penn State. It's always at the top, and usually those are the parents who come up to me and be like, guess what? I saved $30,000. Because they're coming in. They may not have an associate's degree, but our kids are routinely going into Penn State with 29, 35 credits, and they're really at a sophomore status. So it truly pays off.
I just want to make a comment. Hats off to our administration and our leadership. When colleges are approaching our school district to ask us to be a part of their program because we've an established dual enrollment system, I think that's pretty impressive. So congratulations to our leaders. Thank you.
Of course, no good deed goes unpunished. We are the school district that the teachers are, filing grievances because of these agreements.
That is true. The next, sorry.
We have to vote.
Maggie, come on, we don't need to vote.
Just trying to keep everyone on target here. Sorry. Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Badensky.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
And Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0. We may move on.
The next item, Amerikey, I just wanted to highlight that we do not have any students at Amerikey. I don't think we even had any last year, but this is an agreement that we think that we need to approve every year. They provide some neat services for some of our autistic students. when needed, and that's the right fit. We don't have any students using it now, but we always think that it's good to have that resource in our back pocket if we need that for a particular student. So at this time, I'd ask the board to approve the agreement between the Abington Heights School District and Marquis, Pennsylvania for the 2023-24 school year.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Budensky.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
And Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Mr. Ackert, ask the board to approve an additional van route at a daily rate of $168.68 through Roar, beginning 1/17/23 for the transportation of a homeless student.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Budensky.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
And Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
We have a college student next year that will be assisting and working on a practicum with one of our nurses. The student goes to Slippery Rock, and we don't yet have an agreement there. We'll get them all at some point and make it a little easier. So at this time, I'd ask the board to approve the affiliation agreement between Slippery Rock University and Abington Heights School District to provide educational experience to the university students enrolled in the school nurse certification program.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Budensky.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
And Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay. Unfinished business? New business? Mrs. Henderson.
I just wanted to congratulate all of the 7th and 8th grade students at the middle school who were inducted into the National Junior Honor Society last night and the night before. I also just wanted to applaud Mrs. Shimko's efforts and Mrs. Leonard's efforts working together to get the program started there. I know that was one of Mrs. Leonard's last standing deeds as principal at the middle school. And I also wanted to thank Mr. Evans and Mrs. Snyder for supporting it. So it was a great event. Mr. Evans did a fantastic job, and it's nice to see that we have new and good things happening. So congratulations to all of them.
Anything else? I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all.